Before the presidency, he was a builder, a brand, and a street fighter from Queens. He made his name in real estate gambling on bold visions and thriving on controversy. The Trump name became synonymous with unapologetic American capitalism, skyscrapers, casinos, and spectacle. He was a master of media, turning fame into his most powerful weapon. Long before politics, Donald Trump was already a household name, captivating the nation with his relentless ambition. This is the story of Donald J. Trump, a man who rewrote the rules of business, media, and politics. From Queens to the White House, his journey was fueled by risk, spectacle, and a belief in his own destiny. He built a brand that survived bankruptcies and scandals, transforming himself from celebrity to political force. His rallies became movements, his name a symbol that divided and defined an era. This is how Donald Trump's name didn't just build an empire, it changed the world. Born in Queens, 1946, Donald Trump grew up in privilege but under pressure. His father, Fred, was a real estate kingpin, their home a symbol of status. Donald was raised to win, competitive, assertive, and always seeking attention. The lessons of strength and dominance shaped his character from the playground to the boardroom. In Queens, the Trump persona, confidence, aggression, and ambition, was forged. Fred Trump, a relentless builder, taught Donald the art of the deal and the necessity of winning. Mary, his mother, brought a love for spectacle and ceremony, inspiring Donald's flair for the dramatic. The Trump household was a crucible of discipline, loyalty, and ambition. Fred's focus on business and Mary's taste for grandeur created a unique legacy. Donald inherited his father's drive and his mother's showmanship, a combination that would define his life. Fred Trump's expectations shaped Donald, especially after witnessing his brother Freddie's struggles. Freddie's gentle nature clashed with the family's ruthless ethos, serving as a cautionary tale. Donald embraced toughness, determined to win his father's approval and avoid his brother's fate. Every achievement became a performance for Fred, fueling Donald's relentless ambition. The shadow of his father was both a burden and the engine of his rise. By 13, Donald Trump's rebelliousness was a problem. His father, believing in discipline, sought a drastic change. He sent Donald to the New York Military Academy to tame his defiance and forge him into a leader. Life at the academy was a shock. He adapted and thrived, channeling his competitive nature into sports. By excelling, he gained status and respect, rising through the ranks to cadet captain. This taught him to project authority and manage people. The academy gave his ambition a framework. Trump praised his time there, claiming it gave him more military training than many who enter the military. He was a confident young man, ready to build his empire. After the New York Military Academy, Donald Trump pursued higher education. He transferred to the Wharton School of Finance, one of the most prestigious business schools. A Wharton degree was a powerful credential. He transferred in 1966, graduating in 1968 with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. Weekends were spent with his father at construction sites, learning the business. Wharton shaped his business philosophy, exposing him to high finance. He became fascinated with using other people's money for massive projects. This education allowed him to take his father's empire in a new direction. Graduating, he was a Wharton man. Armed with knowledge and confidence, he left Queens to make his mark on Manhattan. In 1968, Donald Trump joined his father's company. He wanted to conquer Manhattan. His father, Fred, was skeptical. Donald received a $1 million loan from his father. His first major project was the bankrupt Commodore Hotel. He partnered with the Hyatt Corporation for a complete transformation. The Commodore became the Grand Hyatt in 1980. It announced his arrival as a major player in Manhattan real estate. The era of building the Trump empire had begun. Armed with a Wharton degree, Donald Trump turned his gaze from Queens to Manhattan, a city of stark contrasts in the late 60s and early 70s. While Fred Trump saw risk, Donald saw opportunity, viewing Manhattan as a kingdom to conquer. He dreamed of building monuments of luxury, making the Trump name legendary. His forays into Manhattan were a masterclass in networking, joining Le Club to connect with the city's elite. He absorbed the language of power and identified key players in the city's machinery. Unlike his father, Donald embraced leverage, using other people's money for massive growth. He sought distressed properties, crafted compelling narratives, and sold visions of prosperity to secure financing. He was selling himself as much as real estate. This marked a break from the Trump family's past, built on tangible assets. Donald's empire would be built on high-stakes deals, debt, and the power of his name. It was a volatile path, but it held the promise of exponential growth and fame. He was determined to become the king of Manhattan. Donald Trump's first major Manhattan project was a gamble. He targeted the Commodore Hotel, a dilapidated structure adjacent to Grand Central. In the 70s, the area was seedy, and New York City was careening towards fiscal collapse. To Trump, it was a diamond in the rough. He envisioned a sleek, reflective glass facade, a beacon of modernity. The deal showcased his emerging genius as a dealmaker, securing a major partner, the Hyatt Corporation. The most critical piece was securing a massive tax abatement from the city. He relentlessly lobbied city officials, arguing his project would be a catalyst for renewal. He was a constant presence on the site, learning the art of large-scale development. He wasn't just building a hotel, he was building his reputation. The Grand Hyatt was an immediate success, making Donald Trump a star. He had proven his bet on New York City paid off. Fresh off the Grand Hyatt triumph, Donald Trump sought an even greater prize. He secured the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street, the site of the Bonwit Teller Building. Trump aimed to erect a 58-story skyscraper, Trump Tower. It was designed for opulence, combining retail, office space, and expensive condos. The dark glass exterior and 5-story marble atrium with an indoor waterfall screamed 1980s glamour. Demolishing Bonwit Teller, he controversially destroyed Art Deco sculptures. Completed in 1983, Trump Tower became a phenomenon. Apartments sold at astronomical prices, attracting celebrities and exclusive brands. Trump moved into the penthouse, solidifying his image as a symbol of ultimate success. With the completion of Trump Tower, Donald Trump perfected a strategy that went far beyond constructing buildings. He was pioneering the art of branding in real estate. He understood instinctively what companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's already knew. A powerful brand name is an asset in itself, capable of commanding premium prices and creating customer loyalty. He realized that his most valuable product was not concrete and steel, but his own name. He began plastering Trump in large gold letters on everything he built. It was a mark of quality, a promise of luxury, and a guarantee of a certain high-profile lifestyle. Buying a Trump apartment wasn't just buying real estate, it was buying into a fantasy of success and glamour. This branding strategy was meticulously cultivated through the media. Trump made himself incredibly accessible to reporters, always ready with a quotable soundbite or a boast about his latest deal. He understood that controversy generated headlines, and headlines created name recognition. He picked public fights, exaggerated his wealth, and presented himself as a larger-than-life character. He co-authored The Art of the Deal, a book that was part memoir, part business manual, which became a massive bestseller. The book cemented his public image as a master negotiator and a business genius, a man who could turn any situation to his advantage. It was a masterful piece of personal marketing that transformed him from a New York developer into a national celebrity. He began to license his name, a move that allowed him to expand his empire with minimal personal risk. Other developers would build projects and pay him a handsome fee simply for the right to put the Trump name on their buildings. This extended the brand's reach into new markets and new product categories. Soon there were Trump-branded suits, Trump-branded steaks, Trump-branded bottled water, and even a Trump board game. Each new product, regardless of its success, served to reinforce the core brand and keep his name in the public consciousness. He was transforming himself from a noun, a person, into an adjective that signified luxury, quality, and a winning attitude. This relentless focus on brand building set him apart from every other developer of his generation. While others focused on the financials of their projects, Trump focused on the narrative. He was selling a story, and he was the hero of that story. The buildings, the casinos, and the products were all just props in the grand drama of his success. This strategy was not without its critics, who accused him of being all style and no substance, a showman who valued flash over quality. But the power of the brand was undeniable. It created a perception of success that would prove remarkably resilient, allowing him to weather future financial storms that would have destroyed a less powerful or recognizable name. After conquering Manhattan, Donald Trump sought a new world to dominate: Atlantic City's burgeoning casino industry. For a showman like Trump, the casino business was irresistible. He aimed to replicate his Manhattan success, building opulent landmarks. His entry was aggressive. He opened Trump Plaza, later acquiring another casino, transforming it into Trump Castle. His most ambitious project was the Trump Taj Mahal, declared the eighth wonder of the world. Financed with high-interest debt, Trump bet its scale would cover the payments. He controlled much of Atlantic City's gaming market. But behind the facade, problems arose. He had massive debt, and the market became saturated. The high-leverage strategy proved a perilous gamble. The king of the boardwalk was about to learn that the house doesn't always win. In the 1980s, Donald Trump's rise was fueled by debt. He leveraged assets to borrow vast sums, building ever grander projects. Trump expanded into casinos, an airline, and a yacht, symbols of his success. But this empire was dependent on a growing economy and rising asset values. Trouble began in Atlantic City. The Taj Mahal was a financial black hole. As the economy slowed and property values fell, his assets were worth less than his debt. The economic roller coaster was heading down. The debt that fueled his rise now threatened a spectacular crash. He faced losing everything. By 1990, Donald Trump's empire was on the brink of collapse. The recession hit the real estate market hard. The Trump Taj Mahal filed for bankruptcy in 1991, followed by his other casinos. His airline was grounded, he was forced to sell his yacht, and was billions in debt. The press declared the Trump phenomenon over. Facing an army of bankers, Trump argued he was more valuable alive than dead. He convinced them that keeping him in charge would give them a better chance of recouping their investment. He lost control, but kept his name and job. He continued to project success, even when his financial reality was dire. He persuaded his creditors that the Trump brand itself was an asset worth saving. The empire was in ruins, but the builder was still standing, ready for a comeback. The early 1990s were a period of rebuilding for Donald Trump. He focused on making his casinos and hotels more efficient and profitable. As the real estate market in New York began to rebound, the value of his core holdings, like his stake in Trump Tower, started to climb once again. In 1995, he formed Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts, a publicly traded company that consolidated his Atlantic City properties. He partnered with other developers to build new Trump-branded towers around the world. He was leveraging the power of his brand to rebuild his fortune. By the end of the 1990s, Donald Trump had staged one of the most remarkable financial comebacks in American business history. In the late 90s, Donald Trump's ambitions expanded beyond real estate. He understood his name was his most valuable asset. He embarked on a brand extension, attaching the Trump name to luxury products. This included menswear, fragrances, crystal, steaks, and bottled water. This expansion included purchasing the Miss Universe organization. In 2004, The Apprentice debuted. The show was a success, catapulting Trump to international fame. His catchphrase, "You're fired," became a global phenomenon. The Apprentice was a marketing masterstroke, solidifying his persona as the ultimate symbol of business success. He had successfully built an empire of perception, perfectly positioned for his next act. By the turn of the millennium, Donald Trump had completed a remarkable transformation. He was no longer just a real estate developer from New York, he had become a celebrity. He understood that public attention was a currency more valuable than cash. He cultivated a symbiotic relationship with the New York tabloid press, feeding them stories of his lavish lifestyle and bombastic opinions. He knew that even negative headlines kept his name in the public eye. This mastery of the media was a deliberate and finely honed strategy. He crafted a persona of unparalleled success and unshakable confidence, and he played this role to perfection. Recognizing that his fame gave him a significant advantage in his business dealings, he purchased the Miss Universe pageant, instantly making him a power player in the world of televised entertainment. This deep understanding of the media landscape would prove to be his most potent weapon. This long apprenticeship in the world of celebrity media was the perfect training ground for his future political career. In 2004, Donald Trump's fame peaked with the premiere of The Apprentice. The show's premise was simple. Contestants competed in business tasks, with the winner getting a job at the Trump Organization. Trump, as the ultimate judge, grilled contestants in the boardroom. The show was a branding masterclass, presenting Trump as the epitome of success, rehabilitating his image after the 90s. It gave him a direct connection to millions, building public goodwill for a new competitive arena. From the Apprentice boardroom, "You're fired" became a global phenomenon. Donald Trump's signature line, delivered with a pointed finger. The phrase was more than just a line, it projected ultimate authority. The catchphrase embedded itself in culture, appearing on merchandise and parodied on television. Trump trademarked the phrase, recognizing its power. It offered a fantasy of control, a symbol of absolute power. This demonstrated Trump's genius for branding. It reinforced his image as a strong leader. It was viral marketing, shaping his public persona and laying groundwork for his political future. With the global success of The Apprentice acting as a massive engine of publicity, Donald Trump supercharged his strategy of brand licensing. He correctly deduced that his name, now synonymous with success and luxury, could be sold as a product in its own right. The business model shifted significantly. While he continued to develop some properties himself, a growing portion of his business involved other people paying him for the right to use his name. Developers in places like Panama, Turkey, and the Philippines would build towers and pay Trump millions to call their projects Trump Tower or Trump World. This allowed him to expand his global real estate footprint with virtually no financial risk to himself. This brand-first strategy extended far beyond buildings. The Trump name began to appear on a dizzying array of consumer goods, creating what he hoped would be seen as a complete luxury lifestyle brand. There were Trump signature suits and ties, Trump brand mattresses, Trump bottled water, Trump fragrance, and even Trump steaks, sold through the Sharper Image catalog. The quality of these products varied, but the marketing message was always consistent. Buying a Trump product was a way to associate oneself with his success. It was an aspirational brand, selling not just an item, but a piece of the glamorous, high-flying lifestyle that Trump himself represented. This strategy was brilliant from a marketing perspective. Every licensed product acted as a small billboard, further increasing the ubiquity of the Trump brand. A man wearing a Trump tie or a guest staying at a Trump-licensed hotel was participating in and promoting the brand. However, this approach also had its vulnerabilities. Because he did not own or directly control many of these ventures, his name was attached to the successes and failures of his partners. This led to numerous lawsuits from condo buyers and investors who claimed they had been misled by the promise of the Trump brand. The strategy demonstrated a clear prioritization. The promotion and monetization of the name took precedence over execution. Ultimately, this period of intense brand licensing was crucial in cementing Trump's public image as a ubiquitous symbol of wealth. He had successfully transitioned from being a builder to being a brand manager, a merchant of his own myth. The sheer volume and variety of products bearing his name created an inescapable aura of success, regardless of the actual financial performance of any single venture. This perception of being everything and everywhere was incredibly powerful. It created a sense of inevitability and overwhelming success that would be difficult for future critics to dismantle. The brand was the reality, and he had plastered it across the globe, preparing the ground for his most ambitious marketing campaign yet. Donald Trump had publicly toyed with running for office for decades. As far back as 1988, he ran full-page ads in major newspapers, leading to speculation about a presidential run. He sought the Reform Party nomination in 2000. These efforts were largely dismissed as publicity stunts. They allowed Trump to test political messages and gauge public reaction, themes that would become central to his platform years later. He presented himself as an outsider who could fix the country's problems. His fame, amplified by The Apprentice, gave him a platform, cultivating an image as a nonpartisan truth-teller who was fed up with the incompetence of professional politicians. These flirtations were a low-risk way for Trump to build his political credentials, connecting with a segment of the electorate that felt ignored by Washington. In 2011, Donald Trump's political commentary took a sharp and decisive turn, moving from general punditry to a focused and relentless attack on the legitimacy of the sitting president, Barack Obama. Trump became the most prominent and vocal proponent of the so-called birther conspiracy theory, a baseless claim that President Obama was not born in the United States and was therefore ineligible to be president. This was not just a casual comment, it was a sustained media campaign. Trump used his immense celebrity platform, appearing on numerous news programs to demand that Obama release his long-form birth certificate. He presented himself as a serious investigator who was simply asking the questions that, in his view, no one else had the courage to ask. This move marked a significant escalation of his political involvement. The birther campaign was deeply controversial and widely condemned as being racially charged. However, it proved to be incredibly effective at gaining him attention and support within a specific segment of the Republican base. He was, in effect, tapping into a powerful undercurrent of resentment and suspicion directed at the nation's first African-American president. By championing this cause, Trump positioned himself as the leader of this opposition. a fearless fighter willing to challenge the establishment and confront uncomfortable truths, even though those truths were demonstrably false. He dominated the news cycles for weeks, completely eclipsing other potential Republican presidential candidates. The White House eventually released President Obama's long-form birth certificate in April 2011, definitively proving the conspiracy theory false. At a press conference, President Obama openly mocked Trump, who was scheduled to be a guest at the White House Correspondents' Dinner just days later. At the dinner itself, Obama and comedian Seth Meyers spent a significant portion of their routines lampooning Trump as he sat, stone-faced, in the audience. Many observers believed this public humiliation would be the end of Trump's political ambitions. They saw it as a decisive defeat, a moment where the celebrity gadfly was finally put in his place by the seriousness of the presidency. In retrospect, though, this episode may have had the opposite effect. Instead of being deterred, Trump may have been hardened and emboldened by the experience. He had successfully captured the national spotlight and had become a hero to a vocal minority who believed he had been unfairly targeted by a liberal elite. He had successfully identified and mobilized a potent political force that was fueled by anti-establishment anger and identity politics. The birther controversy, while damaging to his reputation in many circles, provided a clear proof of concept for his future political strategy. It demonstrated his willingness to use inflammatory, fact-free attacks to energize a base and dominate the media, a tactic that would become the hallmark of his 2016 campaign. Following the birther controversy, Donald Trump did not retreat from the political stage. Instead, he seamlessly transitioned into a role as a regular political commentator, primarily on the Fox News channel. For several years leading up to his 2016 campaign, he was a frequent guest, often given a weekly call-in spot on the popular morning show Fox and Friends. This provided him with a consistent, friendly platform to communicate directly with a large, conservative-leaning audience. He used this time to cultivate his political persona, railing against what he described as weak leadership in Washington, bad trade deals that were costing American jobs, and an immigration system that he claimed was out of control. This period of punditry was essentially a multi-year soft launch of his presidential campaign. He was able to test and refine his core messages, seeing which themes resonated most strongly with the Fox News audience. He spoke in simple, direct, and often inflammatory terms, honing the communication style that would later define his rallies. He built a narrative of American decline, painting a picture of a once great nation being taken advantage of by other countries and weakened by its own political leaders. He positioned himself as the only one who could see the problems clearly, and the only one with the strength and business acumen to fix them. He was, in effect, conducting a free, long-term focus group with his future political base. During these years, he built a deep reservoir of trust and familiarity with his target audience. He was not a distant politician speaking in carefully vetted sound bites. He was Mr. Trump, the successful businessman who called into their favorite morning show to say what they were already thinking. This constant presence made his eventual transition from pundit to candidate feel natural and authentic to his followers. He had already established his credentials as a fierce critic of the status quo and a champion of the forgotten American. When he officially announced his candidacy, he was not an unknown quantity to this crucial segment of the electorate. He was a known and trusted voice they had been listening to for years. The political and media establishments largely failed to appreciate the significance of this groundwork. They continued to see him as a celebrity entertainer, a television personality who was simply seeking attention. They did not realize that he was systematically building a political movement right under their noses on the most watched cable news network in the country. He was bypassing the traditional party structure, the donors, and the political consultants, and forging a direct bond with millions of voters. By the time he officially entered the race, the foundation had already been laid. He was not starting from scratch. He was activating a base that he had spent years cultivating. On June 16, 2015, Donald Trump descended a golden escalator in the atrium of Trump Tower to officially announce his candidacy for President of the United States. The event itself was pure Trump, a made-for-television spectacle that immediately shattered the norms of a typical campaign launch. It was not a carefully staged event in a historic location, but a media happening in the monument he had built to himself. The speech that followed was rambling, unfiltered, and incendiary. It careened from boasts about his wealth to attacks on his political rivals, and most notoriously, to inflammatory comments about Mexican immigrants whom he accused of bringing drugs, bringing crime. They're rapists. The reaction from the political and media establishment was one of universal shock and condemnation. Pundits and rival campaigns immediately declared his candidacy over before it had even begun. They believed his offensive remarks had disqualified him in the eyes of the American public. Major corporations, including NBC, which aired The Apprentice, and Macy's, which sold his clothing line, rushed to sever their business ties with him. The consensus was clear. This was not a serious campaign but a grotesque publicity stunt that had gone horribly wrong. He was seen as a pariah, a toxic figure who had crossed a line from which there was no return. However, the establishment's prediction was profoundly wrong. While many were offended by his words, a significant portion of the Republican primary electorate was electrified. They did not hear racism, they heard a refreshing and long-overdue bluntness. They saw a candidate who was not afraid to speak his mind, who was not constrained by political correctness, and who was willing to address the issue of illegal immigration in a way that resonated with their own anxieties. The media's obsessive coverage of his controversial remarks, intended to be critical, had the unintended effect of amplifying his message and giving him billions of dollars in free airtime. He was dominating the conversation, and his poll numbers began to rise. The escalator ride and the announcement speech that followed were the perfect launch for the campaign that was to come. It established Trump as the ultimate outsider, a candidate so defiant of political norms that he was willing to be ostracized by the very institutions he was running against. The backlash from corporations and the media only served to bolster his anti-establishment credentials in the eyes of his supporters. It proved to them that he was a genuine threat to the existing power structure. The campaign had begun not with a whimper, but with a roar that was either appalling or thrilling, depending on who was listening. The rules of politics were about to be rewritten. The centerpiece of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign was not television advertising or traditional get-out-the-vote efforts. It was the political rally. These events were unlike anything seen in modern American politics. They were massive, often chaotic spectacles that drew thousands of enthusiastic supporters, many of whom would wait in line for hours just to attend. Held in arenas and airplane hangars across the country, the rallies were part rock concert, part populist revival meeting. The atmosphere was electric, fueled by a soundtrack of classic rock and Elton John, and a sense of shared community among the attendees. This, really, was where Trump was in his element, the master showman on his ultimate stage. At these rallies, Trump honed his unique stream-of-consciousness speaking style. He would often discard his prepared remarks and speak for an hour or more, riffing on the day's news, attacking his opponents with derisive nicknames and boasting about his poll numbers. He spoke in simple, direct language, repeating his core messages over and over: build the wall, make America great again, drain the swamp. He created a powerful call-and-response dynamic with the crowd, who would chant his slogans back at him with fervent enthusiasm. These events were a form of direct, unmediated communication, bypassing the critical filter of the mainstream media and allowing him to forge a powerful, personal bond with his supporters. The rallies served a crucial strategic purpose. They were a vivid and undeniable demonstration of the strength and passion of his movement, which was often downplayed or dismissed by mainstream media outlets. The images of massive, cheering crowds created a sense of momentum and inevitability that countered the narrative of his impending political demise. For his supporters, the rallies were a validating experience. They could see that they were not alone in their beliefs, but were part of a large and powerful movement. The events fostered a deep sense of identity and loyalty, transforming voters into dedicated followers who felt a personal stake in his success. These events were also a masterclass in media manipulation. Trump knew that the rallies would generate controversy, whether through his own inflammatory statements or through clashes between his supporters and protesters. He understood that this conflict was compelling television, and it guaranteed him constant, round-the-clock media coverage. While his opponents were spending millions on 30-second ads, Trump was receiving hours of free airtime simply by holding these rallies. He had turned the campaign trail into his own reality show, and the media, even in their criticism, could not help but broadcast every episode. The rallies were the engine of his campaign, fueling his rise and confounding his critics at every turn. As the 2016 primary season unfolded, it became clear that Donald Trump was not just running a campaign. He was waging war on the established rules of American politics. He systematically dismantled a field of seasoned governors and senators, many of whom were considered the future of the Republican Party. He did this by rejecting every piece of conventional political wisdom. He had no real policy team, no major donors, and a minimal ground game. He eschewed detailed policy papers in favor of simple, powerful slogans. He insulted war heroes, mocked a disabled reporter, and engaged in personal, often crude attacks on his rivals and members of the media. With each new transgression that experts predicted would end his campaign, his support only grew stronger. His campaign was a triumph of branding and media dominance over political substance and traditional organization. He understood the modern media environment better than any of his rivals. He used his Twitter account as a personal broadcast network, sending out unfiltered thoughts and attacks at all hours of the day and night. This allowed him to instantly shape the news cycle and speak directly to his followers, without any filter. He turned the Republican debates into personal spectacles, using insults and interruptions to throw his more polished opponents off balance. He proved that in the 21st century, a candidate with a powerful brand and the ability to command attention could defeat opponents with far superior funding and political infrastructure. Trump's success revealed a deep and previously underestimated chasm between the American electorate and the political class. He tapped into a powerful vein of anger and resentment among voters who felt left behind by globalization, ignored by both parties, and condescended to by the cultural elite. These voters were not looking for a conventional politician. They were looking for a wrecking ball. Trump's willingness to shatter norms and offend the establishment was not a bug, it was his primary feature. His supporters saw his crudeness as authenticity, his lack of policy knowledge as a sign that he was not a typical politician, and his wealth as proof that he could not be bought. By the time he secured the Republican nomination, Donald Trump had fundamentally changed the American political landscape. He had proven that a celebrity outsider could hostilely take over a major political party. He had demonstrated the power of free media over paid advertising and the potency of identity politics and anti-establishment anger. He showed that the old rules, which prized experience, decorum, and policy expertise, no longer applied in the same way. The man who had built an empire of buildings and a global brand had now executed his most audacious takeover yet. He had conquered the Republican Party, and now he had his sights set on the ultimate prize, the White House itself. Donald Trump's presidency disrupted American politics and global relations. His White House was marked by policy changes and public pronouncements. He governed with an instinct for spectacle and a direct line to his base through social media. His legacy is defined by his personality and his willingness to challenge the post-war liberal order. Supporters point to conservative Supreme Court justices and tax cuts as victories. Critics view his legacy as damaging to democratic institutions and international alliances. Ultimately, his impact is one of lasting polarization. His presidency was a political earthquake. His legacy will be debated for years to come. The story of Donald Trump did not end when he left the White House in January 2021. In fact, his departure marked the beginning of a new, unprecedented chapter in American history, that of a former president who refuses to fade into a quiet retirement. He remains the single most dominant and powerful figure within the Republican Party, a kingmaker whose endorsement can make or break a candidate's career. He continues to hold his signature rallies, drawing massive crowds and maintaining a powerful grip on his millions of supporters. His influence has not waned. It has simply shifted from the Oval Office to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. His post-presidency has been defined by a relentless campaign to contest the 2020 election, a crusade that has further entrenched the deep political divisions in the country. The events of January 6, 2021, when a mob of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of the election, stand as a stark and violent testament to his enduring influence. For his followers, he remains the rightful leader, the victim of a vast conspiracy. For his opponents, he represents a continuing threat to American democracy itself. He has successfully transformed a political party into a movement centered almost entirely on his own personality and grievances. The question of his future and the future of the nation's political landscape remains profoundly unsettled. He continues to tease another run for the presidency, keeping the political world in suspended animation. His every statement is scrutinized, his every move analyzed. He has created a situation with no historical parallel, where a former president looms over his successor like a shadow government. The normal rhythms of politics have been broken and the country remains locked in the same contentious debate centered on one man. Therefore, the final chapter of the Donald Trump story has yet to be written. He is a figure who defies easy categorization and historical precedent. From the streets of Queens to the pinnacle of global power, his journey has been a testament to branding, media mastery, and understanding American anxieties. Whether he is seen as a patriot who saved his country, or a demagogue who threatened to tear it apart, one thing is certain: his impact is undeniable. The boy who wanted to build an empire succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, creating a legacy so disruptive and powerful that its consequences are still unfolding before our very eyes.